Greetings, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to Labor and the Street. I'm your host, Trent Willis. On today's show, we'll be discussing a few different topics, one of them being the big three automakers, meaning GM, Chrysler, and Ford, who are lined up to receive a $25 billion emergency bailout from the government. We'll also be talking about the Obama campaign and election, and we will be talking about a December 15th rally scheduled in defense of two Longshore brothers who are members of the ILWU Local 10 who were illegally jailed in Sacramento, California. I have three guests with me today, and I'll go ahead and introduce them now. Okay, directly to my right, I have Brother Clarence Thomas, who is a member of the International Longshore and Warehousemen's Union Local 10, and he is also a member of the ILWU Savings Lives campaign, in which he is the campaign coordinator. Directly to his right, I have Brother Bill Camp, who is the executive secretary of the Sacramento Labor Council, who recently passed a resolution in defense of the two brothers that I spoke of earlier. And directly to his right, I have Brother Jack Heyman, who is a member of the International Longshore and Warehousemen's Union Local 10 and the ILWU Executive Board, and he's also an activist. Our first topic of discussion will be the big three automakers, meaning GM, Chrysler, and Ford, who are lined up to receive $25 billion in emergency assistance money from the government as a part of the $700 billion bailout plan. And I guess I'll go straight to my first speaker here, Brother Clarence Thomas, to get some of your comments about this $25 billion bailout plan for our major three automakers here in the United States. And what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, Trent, I think that it's a major presumption that they're going to get the $25 billion. For one thing, the automakers have been entrenched in making big cars. They really have been oblivious to the whole issue of making cars that are efficient, using alternative fuels. And the problem is that they're a dinosaur, in my opinion. No matter what your political perspective may be, whether or not you're on the right or the left, there's opposition to this. Many people are saying that if there is a bailout, there needs to be a structural adjustment for the big three, which basically means that the leadership should change, and that also we need to talk about the whole issue of nationalizing, which means that the people would own the car manufacturing concerns, and that there would be some kind of a commitment to having a green industry. In other words, that there would be automobiles that would be sustainable, automobiles that would be cost efficient, and automobiles that would provide the kind of jobs for Americans that cannot be offshored. I think we have to remember some of the big three have plants overseas, and the kind of automobiles that they're making are different. So there's some basic fundamental questions here. I think the critical thing here is that there needs to be debate, and that debate should be much more meaningful and much more rigorous than the debate was to give the Secretary of the Treasury $700 billion.
Thank you very much for those comments, Brother Thomas. I know one of the issues that I've seen while looking at our major networks, I see that the workers in this equation are not being, what should I say? The needs of the workers are not being addressed. When you talk about the $25 billion bailout, I haven't heard anything as to how this money is going to be filtered to the working man and woman who is the one struggling out there to make a living right now. And with those comments said, I'm going to go to my next speaker, Brother Bill Camp from the Sacramento Labor Council, to give me his views on that.
Well, I think the problem is these people have been misleading the country and mismanaging these automobile manufacturers for a long time. This is not something that just happened last week or last month or the end of this year. This is a group of people that have been trying to take our manufacturing sector in the wrong direction. We need to do what Clarence is talking about. And I don't know how we do that unless we take that $25 billion and buy those companies and have them then serve the interests of everybody. You can't run a country on the unrestrained pursuit of greed, which has got us into the problem we're in today. You got to run it with a purpose and a vision. We want Barack Obama to have a vision. and a purpose that everybody can get the benefit of, not just those fellows that own all that stock. So maybe we need to buy that stock and own those companies ourselves as a government and make sure that we put these manufacturing operations in the right direction.
Now there are countries who the citizens own the stock in the country as far as the industry is concerned. I believe Venezuela is one of those countries where the working people have a stake in what's going on as far as the industry. Jack, why don't you give me some of your comments about what you think about countries who own the stake in their industries and how much better it would be for working people here if we were to own our industries.
Sure, Trent. Oh, first of all, let me say that I'm opposed to any bailout for the big industrialists. I was opposed to the $750 billion bailout that both Barack Obama and McCain supported. I think most working people were against that. It didn't do anything to help the financial crisis. It continues to deepen. And I think we're going into a financial crisis or economic crisis, maybe even deeper than it was in the 30s. Of course, the first thing that happens is they blame workers. They scapegoat workers for the economic crisis. They've been doing that in Detroit for a long time. And my feeling is that if they think it's too costly to hire workers, what they need to do, particularly in terms of the health care plan, is look at universal health care for all workers, not just auto workers, but everybody. This is the richest country on the face of the earth, and yet we don't see health care as a right to every individual. That's something that has to change. We also have to look at the fact that we don't need the employers in there. If they can't make an automobile and feel that they're not making a decent enough profit, let them get out. I'm not in favor of giving $25 billion to automobile makers. Nationalize it, put it under workers' control, and let the workers make the product. Just like in Longshore, if these companies like APL, which just said they're moving out of Oakland, if they're going to pick up and leave, we operate the equipment. We don't need them to load the ships and unload the ships. What capital investment do they make? Hardly any. It's our labor that they're making their profits off of, and we can do the work. It's the same for the auto workers, Trent.
All right, thank you for those comments. Now, I mentioned earlier about how the working man was being ignored in this exchange that we're having with the government, and we're talking about all of these bailout funds. I haven't heard much talk about any funds being distributed to working people, and it seems like the consensus of this panel is that workers should control the industry in which they work. Why don't we talk about for a second what would working people do on a day-to-day basis to help mobilize and organize themselves into making sure that this gets done?
Well, I think that the first thing that needs to happen is that labor is going to have to act in its own interest and not work in the interest of the Democratic Party. That's a fundamental problem. You see, the Democrats and Republicans could be considered two wings of the same party. One is conservative, one is reactionary. That's a reference to a passage that I heard from Gore Vidal, noted playwright, and he was saying that the Democrats are conservative and the Republicans are reactionary. But both parties receive financing from corporations. And so this is the reason why you saw both the Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservative, voting for the bailout. What labor needs to do is to speak in the interest of working people. The point that Jack made is a very important one. Workers in this country do not understand their value and their power. One of the things that separates the ILWU from any other union in the United States, we understand ours, and that's the reason why on May 1st, 2008, we shut down all of the ports on the West Coast to oppose the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Imagine if workers, longshore workers on the East Coast, West Coast, the Gulf, all took that same kind of action to demand the kind of worker leadership and participation in running these companies and having a say in these so-called bailouts. That would change the political landscape. The challenge is the labor leadership going to do that? And I submit to you that when the people got the word about the bailout. It was not labor leaders, it was not even progressives who were out front. The outrage of the average American, that outrage was out front. And so we need to catch up, we in labor, and we need to start acting, mobilizing and organizing in our own name, independent of those political parties in the interests of working people.